So thank you very much for invitation and introduction. Maybe not to lose time, I will give maybe some little comment about the movie that is running, and maybe it will be a little bit more provocative, just in terms of being aware that once you present something to the audience, there is no step back. There are no these excuses and brackets like this is work in progress, we are still collaborating, we still have to develop. It's a movie. It's a movie. I enter in, I see what it is, and I think it's legitimate to talk about it in like a full terms. You know, like going into the cinema, you don't say, okay, the Revenant will be even more elaborated. You know, there will be a new version in a year. Yeah. So maybe this is why, because somebody decided. What I heard, somebody decided this will be the way of presentation. Yeah? So, in a way, I see this movie as a documentation of the work. Yeah? So, the editor or the director of the movie has a view on the work that has been made until now by all of you and many others involved. So, it is a work of that person, yeah, number one. Yeah? As far as I understand, that person is not here. Okay. I hate to talk about people who are not present, but anyhow, what maybe is interesting to me, and that would be also a question for you, I think the more or less all the movies have something in common, and that is the tension between body and camera. So the idea here, I think, is not so much about documenting dance performance or choreography and so on, but actually, now I'm talking after seeing the movie, yeah. But actually, it's a meeting of the two fields. And I'm saying that it's not documentation in the terms that discussions are going on for 2 decades, let's say, because as far as I understand, none of these scenes that are included in the movie have been performed in front of audience, in front of other people. So the only spectator is actually the camera and the crew. In that sense, maybe it's good to a little bit reframe what these works that you've been doing are. Maybe they are not so much about documenting, but we can put them in the tradition of video dance or dance movies that that exist from the beginning of 20th century, and they have different historical moments. Video dance was very popular in the late 80s, beginning of 90s, and there the point was that works that were done on stage were then adapted for camera, and some of the great choreographers and movie makers collaborated. Andreas de Kersmaker and Peter Greenaway, for example, or Walter Verden, Belgian filmmaker, made wonderful adaptations of the shows that have been done for stage. Yeah? But I have another association, which I don't know if that practice existed in other countries, but in the in the early years of television, in former Yugoslavia, for example, television would commission choreographies for cameras, and that was, we are talking about late 60s, beginning of 70s. Back then, there were no stages. for dance. There were no like dance theater houses. Dance was in a way either ballet or folklore. Contemporary dance was pushed somewhere out. It was not institutionalized. And interestingly enough, the widest audience was on television. There were choreographies which would be shown on TV only and not live, 10, 15 minutes. In terms of television program, they had a function of filling the gap, yeah? Because it was one program, and if there would be a kind of hole between the two programs, these choreographies with experimental music also would be presented. And this is some kind of forgotten phenomena these days, because now you put commercials. As soon as there is a hole, you put a commercial, and that is the experimental choreography of television today. Yeah? So to go back to the work that you've been doing, this would be actually, I talked a little bit with Walter before, and I know that the interest was not so much in like catching something that is taking place, but actually creating image and frame that the situation in which a performer is, so being aware that at the end the result will be an image. Yeah? And in that sense it's interesting actually to me, and maybe that's now a question to all of you, what is at the end of the tunnel? Yeah, like if you look, yeah, do you have that perspective? Yeah, and you see that there is an image, a moving image at the end of the tunnel, or and how this then influences the presence, for example, the way you operate, and so on. Do you feel like completely present there, knowing that the presence that you deliver in the moment of filming will be different from the presence that a spectator will see then watching the video of it?
I think it's very present in terms of this when we are making in both my projects, because the initiative is to see what conditions when a dance is produced, especially for camera or for the lens, can be created. So for us, it's not the changing of the medium or changing of the way of making dance, but rather is to seek for a condition or possibility that only dancing for the lens can be made. So that's how it departed. I was not really thinking about this is a dance that made for spectators, or well, because at the beginning it's always very clear. It wasn't a dance that made and then the camera documented and cast another quality onto it, or cast another interpretation of what the dance is made. So it's totally fresh and totally camera oriented. For me it's kind of in a maze, and me and my collaborator is seeking for conditions that we can find only through cameras.
I think for me that was very much the case, that the work came about as a form of documentation immediately. There wasn't this sense that we were thinking about what this text could do outside of this context. This is absolutely, this is the end point, but also perhaps a beginning, which is what makes it quite interesting. However, for me, I was very conscious that we would be judged on what happens here. There's an audience that comes here, and we wanted to take them seriously in that respect. So this isn't, and I wonder, well, I hope that that seriousness comes through in the work that we did. I mean, obviously, I didn't actually make a dance with Lulu. We did a sort of a different kind of choreography, but it was still inspired by the conditions of this project. The idea that we would be trying to have a choreographic exchange happen at the end. And I feel that this exchange between the camera and the dancer, or this exchange of text and sound, that it reflects that sort of push and pull of choreography.
Just in particular about my work with Valentin, I don't think it has choreography as the initial impulse, but rather I approached him and I said, let's make a feature film. So it's more of a cinematic ambition, and it's not so much what the camera is doing to him, because I don't think he was performing to the camera, although he was very aware of where his shadow was. But still, we weren't really communicating during the shootings. He was doing his thing and I was doing my thing. Sometimes I placed him, sometimes I had images in my head that I wanted to realize. For instance, this whole dialectics with the fisherman and the net. This was for me one of the appropriations of the term capturing dance. So what if he would be a creature and he has to be fished? So in a way, I wanted to create a cinematic language, a short film, using dance as the means of character development and character expression. So somehow his subjectivity as a character is expressed through dance, but he could have been just walking. And I think in some other films in the bigger film, it's not so much about dance in a way. I mean, where it's like it's not gestures which I don't need to associate with any particular trend or tradition in dance. But even though we did study that, and we from Cologne who don't have a background in dance, we did study that, but I feel we were still very much filmmakers in our approach. At least I was.
But can I ask a question? The question you just made for me implies that there is a difference between the look of the camera and the look of a person. And do you think so? Or what is the difference then between the look of a camera and the look of a person?
You mean
in terms of because
live presence of a spectator?
If I know that I'm being watched by a camera or by a public or by someone, I wonder if isn't it the same? Isn't it creating the same type of presence for the person who is being watched? Because you change at the moment you get conscious that you're being watched by a camera or by someone else. I don't know if there is a difference between. I mean,
I don't know. I think there is. There is, like, also technically speaking, there is a difference. How far do you need to project your presence? Yeah. If you have camera here, you can speak like this. You know? But if I speak like this.
For me,
it's more the where the microphone is than.
No. I think it's from the perspective of a dancer or performer. It is this measurement of presence. But I think these are more like technical questions. What I'm interested in is the institution of viewing. Yeah. I think Miriam said before one very important thing, How would this look like if you would have, instead of one movie, I don't know how many of you are, like how many sections, 10 different installations, and you would go from one to the other. And here you come to the politics of attention. Yeah? I think this is a very smart decision if you want to have spectators' attention towards, let's say, what has been done here, at least a little insight. Because when you enter in the cinema, and this is a cinema situation, more or less, you cannot stop. And you can go out, but the movie will continue running. If you watch it on television or computer, you can stop and come back. If you are in the gallery, you can, come back in the afternoon and the movie is still running and so on. So you have different...
That's what's happening here.
That's what's happening here, but my experience was, I'm talking only about my experience, hey, the movie is starting, come in. So I was there at the beginning and I left at the end, as if it would be in the cinema. And I think it is about how the institution creates spectatorship. So if it would be like an installation, would be another kind of, and we would have completely different discussion right now. Not to talk if we would actually have these little boxes, like a simulation of a TV screen or little puppet theater, and we would have an insight into live thing, that you would have kind of film setting, but it would be live. It would be, again, a different kind of dispositive of spectator, like the way, the institutional way in which you are placed to see something. In the theater, it's beginning to the end. In gallery, free floating, you come and you go. In the cinema, also beginning at the end. Yeah. So, and this is my question, like in a way, origin of the question. When you think about where will this end, where will your performance end? What will be the position of body and subject that will encounter what I'm been doing, And I think this is very important, and this then influences also decisions in the medium and so on, As you said, it was immediately kind of feature, and also a decision about, okay, where am I then? If I'm doing feature, what is my position? I will take a distance and observe what's going on. In your case, you said, I want to manipulate, I want to provoke the voice, I want to put more on the image that is there and the performance. I don't want to dance, I want to work with the medium, what the medium offers me to do. And so that is, I don't know if I answered your question, but
I also just wanted to.
But maybe you can answer. You did. I didn't do anything here. So.
I would definitely say that one of my issues or my questions was if one can still engage with this process without a camera. So even if I had made a film, I would probably not have used the camera in the making of this film. Perhaps out of sheer perversity, just when one says, well, we use a camera, then I go, well, what would happen if I didn't? And in that respect, I think that has something to do with the fact that it isn't just by looking. When you're in a theatre, say, and you're watching a performance, or in a gallery and you're watching a performance, you can look anywhere. I can look at Alex now, or I can look at you, or I can look at Luca, or I can notice that Walter's been playing with his phone. There's all sorts of things I can do. But when I'm watching a massive screen, I'm not really going to go anywhere else. That's why I say something like IMAX is such an extreme experience, because you really can't look anywhere else. You're completely in this world. And so for me, there is naturally a difference. And that difference is pretty much what Janez said, is how it has influenced or it's directed what we've done to a very large extent. I mean, I know that you, Mariana, we also did a radio show, which was also a slightly perverse reaction, in the best possible way, to the provocation of this project. Is how can we document? How can we capture? Do we even want to capture? What are we hunting? So after a while, those kind of questions came up for me, and so I was glad that there was still the latitude to go beyond the camera, certainly, in this project.
Well, I feel this direction of attention that you were mentioning goes beyond the device or the installation. I think it's in the film itself, in the montage. There is a particular grammar to film or to video art or to certain traditions of performance, and I think you can also stress certain aspect of it. For instance, you can begin with an establishing shot, and then you can start introducing a character, revealing slowly, and then the character appears. So you're using a cinematic logics of montage, which is not in other films. So I wonder how this, because some of us, it was a very different approach also to the final outcome, because some of us just sent sort of raw footage to Tobias and let him take the decision of how this works, and others, like myself or Benjamin or Miriam in one of the works, and Dina in one of the works, had beginning and end, and they work somehow autonomously. And we require in this way from the audience a certain attention and to give a certain value to what they see. And the long film kind of tricks the audience in a way into not seeing these units as they are, but seeing a larger thing. So in a way, it's how it documents the diversity of approaches, which wouldn't be there if we had each film as an autonomous installation work. But still, it's something that I missed. Somehow also being able to frame your own attention, your own, also the ontological status you give to the images you're seeing. Is it a documentary? Is it a performance documentation, or is it a film? And somehow it's all mixed. It's the diversity of approaches too, in a way. But there's a stress onto the film element of it. I mean, the installation is a film set, a studio set. So somehow the technique, the fetish maybe of the film is the sort of the common ground.
Please.
Yeah, to continue on question, I think of course it's immensely different to be performing for live audience. Does this actually work? I don't know if I need it.
Yes,
to perform for.
We need it.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
They didn't just give it to you
It's
for a
for
reason.
the recording film. Yeah.
For
the recording.
Okay. Oh wow. Well, yeah, because naturally the live performance is about communicating with the present people here and now. And when you're performing for a camera, it's in some degree abstracted. It's for an unlimited number of potential spectators who you don't know, you can never know, and you don't know if there will be any of them or if there'll be a million of them. So that's like somehow, in some level, a very different modality, in addition to being aware of that the media is very different in terms of reception to people. like the way how you feel the event or how you perceive this framed image is of course different, but I don't know, I won't go further into that, the reception. But I think one of the aspects that I find interesting in the collaboration that we did is that we kind of tried to trick that a little bit, that there is this aspect of working with this improvisation that's happening between us, and we are communicating to each other, and kind of trying to trick ourselves around the fact that we are recording ourselves and in some way performing for the camera. And I find that's kind of interesting. There is that even to work with this improvisation, that I think improvisation in some sense is a little bit like playing football. That it's not about presenting reflected statements so much, but it's about like playing the event and playing the moment, and then that there is no editing. There's just absolutely no editing, and that makes it hugely different from presenting edited statements, where that could be like writing philosophical essays or making a feature film. And then
just a quick question, because what you presented isn't edited.
Well, what's in the film now is, of course, we have chosen like from the material that we have recorded, we have chosen how many are there? 5 or 6 segments to fill in the 5 minutes. So of course that's sure that has been picked from that material. But ideally, how I would see that could be presented is more a long running, less condensed thing. But I think what's interesting in that it's not designed to consist of these segments. That's part of the thing. Yeah, I think I've said.
Yeah, but would you imagine instead of having the second camera to perform this live, the dialogue between, let's say, a performer and the camera, who is actually performing?
Yeah, we thought of doing this live, this same thing. It could be done live, I think. But the part of the concept evidently is that there is some kind of image production as well. That there are some cameras, but that could be done live, and I think it would be entirely like possible and interesting actually to do it.
Okay, question in a little bit different way, yeah? Because there is diversity of capturing the way how, but there is something that is missing, yeah? There is one approach that is missing, and that is the one which we, working in a performance, face on a regular basis, like the camera which is there, you know, and you as a performer completely not interested. Yeah? So it's the camera to document. Yeah? Interestingly enough, we started all this, you know, talk about documentation and so on. And in the film, there is not like, sorry for simplification, maybe there is, maybe it's lost somewhere and so on. But there is no this like documentation, like documenting camera, which of course, if we turn into kind of politics and power between the media, dance and film, immediately put weight on film. Yeah? Like immediately you see, this is actually a film work by filmmakers where dancers were part of the creating team and so on. The setup is very filmic. We watch film. We don't watch performances or documentation of performances. Even the environment is totally filmic. Yeah. So in a way, yeah, sorry to be brutal and pessimistic for dance colleagues, we are again in the same spot, yeah, the big machinery and power of film, yeah, and poor dance, which is always trying somehow to find its space, and at the end of the day, it ends up in a cellar of crematorium. That is the destiny. That is, the final moment. So it sounds funny and so, but at the end of the day, I think you understand what I'm trying to bring up. So maybe, like for those who designed this course and so on, the question would be, okay, yeah, could we imagine another world, yeah, not a revenge world where now dance will have all the power. The movie has, and suddenly there will be no more cinemas and television. It will be like in good old times. You can see news only live, and the messenger, good old messenger, which was never killed, would be the only source of information. It's not about this. It's not about turning wheel of history back, but could we imagine to have something that would be on the equal, on the equal ground, Could we imagine turning a cinema hall, IMAX, yeah, into a dance, a place for dance, for example, yeah? And but of course, the things are much more complicated than I'm trying to somehow say, because the most interesting, and let's not forget, dance and cinema are the art forms of 20th century. That is that is something we should always keep in our mind. Number one. Number two, the main feature of modernism, so the birth time of both cinema and dance, is movement. Yeah? And both what they share, these two art forms, is movement. One is working with moving images, the other one is working with moving bodies or parts of the bodies. So there are things that are in common, historically, politically, and maybe it would be interesting to see this work in more like political terms, in terms of politics of mediums, not big problems in the world, but what is the power that my medium has in relation to the other? Can I speak on the same ground? Like would, yeah, okay.
Can I access here? Yeah, sure. I know what Janez just said. I think it's absolutely crucial, and that's why I want to intervene, because for me it was also extremely revealing the intrinsic dynamics of the project itself, or so to say, this kind of micro-history of the project, which in a way reenacted this kind of dispositives of power relations between media. And also, let's say, not only politics of media, but also politics of subjectivity. Because what was very striking, and this made us very optimistic about the project in the very beginning, when for the first time the two groups met, they immediately went for these experimentations with really low tech, with using their phones or laptops, and the outcome, it was really tremendous, I have to say. So they really contested the power of the media, so they were incredibly inventive to find ways to document or to mediate movement, but also to operate certain media transfers, which were clearly blurring the hegemonic power agencies and also these positions of power. While I think here we have to somehow to agree, we cannot avoid but agreeing that in the movie, of course, we have much more, reproduction of hegemonic positions of the media of the film. But I'm wondering if it's this part of the intention, or this is, so to say, the unconscious of this kind of hegemonic media. What Benjamin was calling the optical unconsciousness, and maybe in this situation we should speak of the cinematographic unconscious, because I think this is really the power of this media that is now gazing me, which is of course the high-tech media, and also the situation of the studio. So, and this is also a political issue, because Rhys was saying last night there is a lot of resource in it. So when you work with a high-tech dispositive, it's much different situation than the low-tech experiment, when you feel much freer, because you're not trashing resources, and like the level of responsibility is lowered, which maybe raises the level of artistic freedom. While in this situation, I think that there was the neutral, say, the impersonal pressure of the production engine, which you had somehow to face, or the short circuit. And I see a variety of experiments. When I was listening to Axel and knowing his experience with Mariana, they obviously try to produce sort of a documentation situation in order to contest this media. We know that, for instance, Krzysztof and Lulu produced Story, which was using another media than, let's say, the optical kind of centered dispositions, but we had the attempt of Lisa, who is somehow lost in a way in the movie, for precisely the obvious reason that it was contesting this kind of reproduction of image. And so somehow what is becoming a dominant line, and this was, I think, really the professional and kind of artistically strong choice of the one who edited Tobias, was to take this kind of the, so to say, hegemonic line of the impersonal power of the cinematographic media, and that's why we have sort of a, let's say, main line, which I have to say that already Bettina mentioned, that we have frontal images, we have a lot of face, we have quite strong, we have to say, female characters, which also formulate certain gender politics related problem, which I don't mean to say I relate to the intention of the makers, but it's maybe related also again to this neutral power, so that we had a lot of Bing, a lot of Lulu, a lot of Liad, like very glamorous and powerful presence, which we have to maybe ask ourselves how this works in relation to the power which is kind of immanent to the media, and the politics of subjectivity that is behind. So to what, of course we start with this kind of a critical premise, and I think now is really important not to say we failed or we did a great critical job, but to continue this labor of critique to understand where we are at. So how do we deal with our own outcome in this situation?
Just to interject very quickly, what was really interesting for me is the female gaze in this work. So Lulu is being filmed by Schering, she's being filmed by Miriam and Lina, and you're being filmed by Hannah. So it's not, so it's these power dynamics are being somewhat questioned in the actual production of the film, but I don't know if you'd like to talk a little bit about that work with Hannah.
Well, I'm not sure if I really agreed on that there's a power dynamic going on upon the mediums, camera or in front of audience versus. Well, for sure, I agree of what Boyan said, for sure. I mean, the center antagonist I feel in the process never is this is for the camera or this is for document, but more about how a filmmaker and a choreographer can work together in this, like subjectivity. And I realized there was a very interesting moment in my project with Felix, because actually we made two films. The one that with the nylon leg with the fan is the one that we show in the master tape. We actually have another version which is simpler with the hand and the fan. And there I really experienced the subjectivity of the camera, because we create a condition where the body has to, well, the task is simple. I have to keep the fan frontal and in the center of the frame. And in the camera you can see how, and my up-down body I'm spinning. So it was a game of orientation and to keep the task always going on. And the camera, when we see the footage, the camera really gives a lot of losing of focus, and the light is different. You can see the shadow have different contrasts in every moment of the footage. And by then I realized, oh, the subjectivity is not totally, if I can say so, the subjectivity is not totally on the performer and the cameraman or filmmaker, but also on the machine itself. So that's how I see it. It never has this very present antagonist between who's the boss, is the camera or the dance. Never happened to me at least, but more this playing of subjectivity that is always going on. So.
I'd say initially, before the project, the actual power relation is that dance is a ephemeral art form, it can only exist live, and then we're challenged as artists to do something that's not like that, to actually have artistic value to something which is not present. So in a way we're trying to catch up. And in my particular experience, I was alone with Valentin, and we were in Lisbon, just the two of us. We share authorship for the project now, but I felt in a way, he's a very experienced artist. He's like 10 years older than me. Many of the times he just started improvising, and then I had to find my room for creativity. And this I have, first of all, with the positioning of the camera, with some possibility of staging him or placing him, and with the cut, with the montage. So in a way, there's the first wave of his brilliant performance. He was performing for 40 minutes, sometimes non-stop. And then there's my wave, and I try, okay, now it's my turn. I want to also be interesting and creative, and so it's our film. So it's not like I'm documenting your performance, which we did before. So our process was, in a way, I was here in Berlin before, and I was documenting his performance. So I was just on stage, and he was doing his thing, and I was reactive. And I ended up not editing this material because I thought, it's his choreography, and I'm documenting it, and I don't feel this is the shared authorship in a way. So I prefer if we have something where we're both authors together in a way. So it's with different contributions.
Yeah. I would just like to, because I felt like I need to be a little bit simplistic today, but at the end of the day there is dialectical synthesis, and it's not about like who is stronger and so on, but it's good to be aware how socially and politically mediums are positioned. But I don't know who was the first. Okay, so please. Do you have a mic?
There's none.
There's one.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I was just thinking that a lot of this politics of the medium that we are trying to talk now, I feel like it begins, or it's rooted already in the setting, the whole social setting and purpose where these activities of presumably documentation are done and what they are planned for. It's not so much possible to kind of revolt some kind of politics of medium anymore purely from your artistic practice, purely from the moment when you are in the studio, when that's already largely set by the ideas of what we are exactly supposedly recording and documenting, and what for, what's the use of it, and what's the meaning of the use, and what's the presentation format. And if we start from this, that okay, the presentation format is more or less film, kind of sort of almost like feature film in a mostly movie theater kind of setting, then the game's already there. Like that's the game has been played. So it's more like asking about, it's more asking, what do we actually want to do with these things that we are producing, the so-called documentation? What is it for? And how is it received? And I guess for me it seems like this question of politics is a lot about this question, that what is it, what's the documentation for, and how should it be used? And for sure one can imagine ways in which they would be recycled into live performing and and that has been done a lot here, yeah, you know, and that's a different politics. But yeah, I guess we could try to imagine what are the purposes.
Oh, I'm not quite sure. I can remember. There's so many interesting thoughts. No, I could think about what actually saying, and I try. I think what's it for? Economics of knowledge. Who owns the knowledge? What do they do with it? I don't want to repeat this about the Brexit sort of tragedy from yesterday, but there's a big debate at the moment about who owns knowledge and the division of knowledge in the political structures of Europe at the moment, what impacts that's having on the developments as we see them. But I was going to go back to the idea of what remains, or there's some of those trigger words. I mean, in our world, there's a long discussion about this word ephemerality. Whether that applies or doesn't apply. There are sort of different schools of thought. There is the idea that performance disappears, never comes back. The whole idea of ephemerality has to do with this kind of thinking, but there's, without naming all the names, there's also another school of thought says that what remains is actually in memory, is embodied, such a thing as an embodied archive. So it's not really true that things disappear. But I was just wondering whether you could imagine, or whether you have talked about it, because I wasn't present the whole time, I was aware of what was happening, that the Janez's point is that what is actually presented at the point of people who do not know, the not knowers that come to the work at this point, are not informed, take at face value what is presented, which is this format of a temporal visual register that goes from the beginning to the end, even if it's a loop in the installation environment, which then, of course, brings with our own training as how we approach this kind of medium. So we start not only to see it as individual moments and fragmentary as it's presented, but also to begin to want to connect. I'm trained to want to connect these images. There is some kind of intention, aesthetic intention, narrative intention, dramaturgical intention. This is quite different, I think, as if it was presented in an installation, discrete individual moments. That's just produces desire to interpret. It produces the choice. I was just wondering, though, whether you had thought about whether a live performance can be the documentation of a cinematic process. So this is one thing I'm missing at the moment. It's a little bit connected to what Janez was saying. So do you trust, or do we trust a subjective organism like ourselves to be able to be given the task of so-called objective recording? So this is a document. Or are we moving into a stage of complete insecurity, but also very interesting openness to the nature of, now see how I can say this, a distrust of objectivity in favor of a desire for subjectivity in the form of what I would call metapractical practice. So for me, the document in this process, because I see it a little bit as Janez does, I see it as artistic work. I think it's great that these different approaches of artistic work come together to want to, as you just say, I don't want to work for somebody. I want to be involved. I want to be part of the show. I want to own it. I want to own what we're doing. And I think that's a very strong desire all over the community, not just an artistic community. But at the same time, could you imagine, or can we imagine, that the documentation is actually a byproduct of artistic process? This film is not a goal, it's not the telos, it actually happens too, because we know, we can see that it remains. There's, well, it's not celluloid anymore, what is it, a chip? It's on a chip, what's it on? Is it in a DVD? Or? It's a file. Yeah, that kind of permanent thing.
A chip of file.
that great, wonderful permanence. You know, it's not on a... The British government actually has their legislation written on lambskin. You know this? Lambskin.
The Magna Charta.
The Magna Charta. Well, no, the contemporary politics is still, the constitution is written on lambskin because it lasts for 800 years. You know, everything else, all the digital medium, all of that stuff, is you can't trust it. It's buried under London, 60 floors deep, but you still can't trust it. There are backups of the backups of the backups. So I'm just wondering if you sort of were thinking about cultural memory as a reliable form, you know, of documentation. I mean, this is a big discursive, Susanna. It's kind of what remains, big debate, 20 years for us, performance world. But how do you feel about that? And how do you feel about artistic work as involuntarily documentary, not consciously documentary?
I think it's an interesting point to raise. It's a shame that Bill isn't here, so we don't speak a little bit of what he has been saying to us during the process. I mean, from Colin's point. Phil has always tried to encourage us to see the relationships that we build for these collaborations as being somehow the end product of this work. It's never been the case. This should be. I mean, even how Sigrid and everyone behind the project have titled it. This is a station along the way. Maybe there won't be officially be a station 4, but the relationships that we've built and the exchanges that we've had are somehow seen as being the primary result of this project, in perhaps almost in that classical relational aesthetics kind of way. That it's about something outside of the exchange that takes place within this institution. And in my experience, that's definitely been the case, and I tried to reflect that in the work that I made. I'm also, I guess for me, something that has been interesting is to see so many pieces made with documentation as an inbuilt part of the work. And that's always something that I've struggled with, for example, so it's been a lesson in and of itself. I mean, to your points on Brexit, I could speak about that for hours, as you can probably realise. But again, something like this project shows how much collaboration and voluntary consensus can occur, and it can be positive and it can be productive. It's been quite interesting, again, it's happened. So, after the Brexit vote yesterday, the immediate reaction of the Labour Party was that they have to get rid of Jeremy Corbyn. And why? Because he's not a strong leader. And something like this project shows that we can get things done by going completely the opposite way. That we can accept certain principles as a kind of consensus and really work without having to be strong, having to approach some sort of, how should I say, we can a stereotypical sort of sense of either masculinity or leadership or who's the choreographer, who's responsible, who gets the credit, this sort of thing. You can have a fluid, minoritarian type of work. And that's, I think, that's a great success of this work, even if you don't immediately get the full, as an audience member, you don't immediately go, that's the story, that's how it's worked. Maybe that's okay. Maybe we can still enjoy that. The scopophilic aspect can still be fulfilled, even if we don't have a certain fulfillment in the narrative.
Yeah, I think this is really great what you just said, because this can immediately bring us to much bigger questions. Like you always have kind of a question: what is like a universal value? What is that stays, in history and so on, And what you are saying is basically relativizing or putting another perspective on it, because as long as you have the strong word, this is a strong word, you imply some strength behind. You imply heroes, you imply sacrifice, you imply pain and so on, And if you look at the history of artwork, what stays inside, you can easily recognize patterns of valuing what is relevant in art. And in that sense, it's really important what you are saying, and that was actually the last thing that we could say, because there are other people who have interesting things to say. Thank you very much, and good luck with the work you